Hello again, everybody. If you've been wondering what happened to Eli the computer guy, Eli the computer guy was putting out 3 to 5 videos a day, every single day, published Monday through Sunday. Why haven't we heard from Eli the computer guy in the past week? It is because I've had an enforced vacation. I had an enforced vacation. YouTube decided I should take 7 days off because the things that I was talking about were way too controversial. So, anyways, I just want to take a minute and talk about this today. The good news is with the forced vacation that I did get to go to the town or the city that I plan to move to in Appalachia. My wife and I actually did put a contract down on a house there. So cross your fingers, cross your fingers. This time next month, I will be moving to the mountains. So that was a good thing. I always look on the bright side. They say always look on the bright side of life. When YouTube gives you lemons, make lemonade, right? They force you to take a vacation, take that time, and go find the new house that you're going to move into. But basically, yeah, last week I got a community strike. And this is a strike. A strike. This isn't a content ID or anything like that, which is supposed to be a smack on the hand. This is an actual full-fledged strike. And so basically what I got a full-fledged strike for, so we look down here, is a COVID breaking NHS in the UK. So I was talking about COVID breaking the National Health Service in the UK, which is basically what the British politicians are talking about. I kind of thought this was an interesting thing to discuss because it shows you the issues with basically supply constraints. So one of the things I try to talk about in these videos is to understand that so many things are based off of perspective, right? $1 million is neither a lot of money nor a little bit of money. That's hard to think about for a lot of folks out there. But the reality is $1 million, whether that is considered a lot or a little, depends on how much money you have in the bank, right? If you are Jeff Bezos right now, $1 million don't mean squat. If you're if you're almost anybody else in the United States at this point, $1 million is a lot of money, right? But one of the things I always try to discuss is like these concepts of things like numbers. Numbers on themselves are neither good nor bad. They're neither big nor small. It's all the perspective of the observer onto those numbers, and that's something that's very important to be thinking about. And so, with COVID breaking the NHS in the UK, what I was trying to talk about in that video is basically supply constraints. So, one of the big problems that first world countries have, the Western world has, is supply constraints when it comes to our medical establishment, and that it does not have a capacity for a massive amount of surge, right? So, if you look at China, however you feel about China in many different ways, the reality was they were able to build massive hospitals in weeks, right? They had COVID, they built massive hospitals. We can argue about how they populated those massive hospitals, but they didn't populate those massive hospitals. They got people better, and then they basically they eliminated they tore down the hospitals once it was done. That is amazing as far as surge capacity goes. If you look at the United States, if you look at most of Europe at this point, we are now a year into the COVID idiocy, and we don't have anything like that. Like if you look at New York City, where are the massive field hospitals that are being built? Where is the hospital sitting in the middle of Central Park in order to deal with a massive surge of COVID cases? It just simply doesn't exist. And so one of the things I was talking about is when there's a lot of folks out there that say, well, they're quote unquote, there's not that many people sick. Some people bring up this idiotic number, this foolish number that says, well, there's a 99% chance of survival for COVID, which I don't really think those people really know how to do math because that sucks. That sucks. That means like if everybody in the U.S. gets COVID over the next couple of years, that basically means 3.3 million people would die. Having a 1% fatality rate is a horrible fucking fatality rate. And on top of that, again, when people are being smug and saying that there's a 99% chance of survival, It's also not talking about the people that go into hospital may die of quote comorbidities, may have other nasty problems. Again, COVID may bring on some other issues. And so, one of the things that I was talking about in that particular video was when you look at the hospital capacity in the United States and in National Health Service in UK and in Europe, one of the big problems you have is 500 people needing to go to the hospital, right? That number is neither large nor small. If you have 500 people that need to go into the ICU and you have 1,000 ICU beds, 500 is basically an irrelevance. If you have 500 people that need to go into an ICU and you have 150 ICU beds, that's going to turn into a zombie apocalypse movie pretty quickly, right? It's not the number. 500 is neither big nor is it small. It's in comparison. What are you comparing that number to? And so one of the things that I talked about in that particular video is, again, a lot of politicians and a lot of the Western world are under this horrible pressure, because basically the amount of people that are actually getting sick and need to go to hospital actually are relatively, on the aggregate, pretty small. But the problem is that our health services are not built to deal with that relatively small number. And so I talked about that, right, and why that was causing problems. And not only that, but then you run into resource issues. Like here in the United States, LA, they've been talking about this a lot, where they have oxygen lines that basically run to every hospital room. Well, again, whenever you build out infrastructure, right, there's an expected demand on that infrastructure. Just because you can send oxygen to every single room, it doesn't mean that the system is built to be under 100% load all the time, right? And so one of the issues that you run into is with COVID, if all of the oxygen lines are being used 100% of the time, it's literally breaking pipe. You can LA Times or The Guardian or whatever else. You can read the real papers, and they're literally talking about how dealing with COVID is breaking these hospitals. Now, it's a really big issue. And so I was discussing that, and then beyond that, one of the things that I was discussing is I don't understand in the United States now why we don't have something like a strategic medical command. So now we're going to have Space Command. We're going to have Space Command. We are going to be, and again, I'm not anti-Space Command. To be honest, I think a Space Command is a good idea. Defend us from the aliens or whatever else. But I was saying, isn't it kind of weird? Isn't it kind of weird that we have a Space Command now, but we don't have a strategic medical command? If I'm worried about dying, if I'm worried about the safety of me, and I'm worried about our culture and our society being able to survive. Right now, aliens, ETs aren't the biggest issue. It's diseases. Again, because when we think about COVID, a big thing to understand here is this is the third major disease that we've seen in about a decade, right? We had Ebola, or Africa had Ebola, thank God. Africa had Ebola. That was nasty and that was horrible and that was god-awful. And people were really worried how much it would spread. Thankfully, I mean, for us, didn't spread out of Africa. That's its own story. But again, like if you looked at it, Ebola, they were really concerned about the contagiousness of Ebola. That happened to be contained after it did a lot of damage in Africa. You've had Zika. Again, I have friends of mine, because we're of the age of people having kids and that, where they literally changed not just travel plans, but work plans and moving plans and all that kind of stuff, because they were in the age of having kids and that they were scared of Zika. We just had the Zika thing. And now we're dealing with COVID. And one of the big points that I was trying to make in this whole thing about breaking the healthcare system is one of the reasons I'm so frustrated with Trump right now. One of the reasons I'm so frustrated with so many of the leaders of the Western world right now is the major question of let's move beyond the vaccine itself. Let's move beyond the quarantine and all that kind of itself, right? Those are their own things. But for every person in any of these societies, do you feel over the past year we have built out a medical infrastructure to deal with airborne Ebola? Right? So we have had a year. We have had a year to deal with COVID at this point. And if you look at it, we are basically scrimping and scrambling along exactly like we were a year ago, right? They're talking about the exact same problems that we had a year ago. They're dealing with these problems in the exact same ways they were dealing with it a year ago. The only difference is now we have a vaccine, and that distribution is going how the hell it's going. But that's about it, right? Where are our massive field hospital capabilities? Where are our young men and women going into military-esque training facilities in order to become, EMTs and at least low-level nurses and all of the radiologists and all of the other technical skills that are required for the medical establishment? Again, that was one of my big arguments in this thing, is where is our strategic medical command? Where is a paramilitary-esque command, just like our National Guard, where you go in, you get training? The U.S. military training is truly some of the finest in the world. My military electronics training was absolutely awesome. Sadly, nobody uses IFF systems in the real world. Oh, well. But we could be where is a program where you have these people come through, they go through some kind of basic training scenario, they then go to the version of AIT in the Army, it's called AIT. They go to advanced training. Some people become EMTs, some people become nurses, some people become, XYZ, all of the skills that are required in order to keep a medical system running, and then basically have them serve, 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year. And think about that. If we built up that capacity in the United States, think about how many holes there are in our medical capacity in the United States. Again, if you think about Appalachia, if you think about, again, the high plains of Wyoming and all that kind of stuff. Places where, again, just getting vaccinations, just getting dental work, just getting a lot of the basic medical care is just simply difficult because they are very, very sparsely populated areas that are huge distances between major cities. So imagine if you could be a young man or woman, you could serve your country. And when I say serve your country, that does not mean go bomb the crap out of some cappuccino folks halfway around the world when nobody in the country can actually argue why the hell we're doing it. When I say serve your country, I mean actually go and 1 week a month do normal vaccine drives. 1 weekend a month, actually go and take a look at people's eczema and stupid crap that they can't get to the hospital to. 2 weeks a year. 2 weeks a year, again, either go to Appalachia or maybe go to Egypt or go to Africa. Right? Instead of bombing these places, actually send in medical people, and for 2 weeks you're going to go there and you're going to provide basic medical services. And if you did something like that, that would actually build up a paramilitary-esque resource that would be incredibly valuable for our society. It would actually target one of the major dangers for our society at this point in time. It would allow young people to have the military-type experience and military-type training without having to worry about going off and bombing people, cappuccino people halfway across the world. And I think that would be an incredibly valuable thing. And what we see right now is this COVID and any of these diseases that might be coming down the pike. I mean, these are systemic dangers. These are systemic. Like when you look at how much damage is being done, whether you say it's through COVID or whether you say it's through the political response to COVID or whatever else, we are literally destroying our society right now because we do not have the medical capacity to deal with this disease. And that, my friends, is medical misinformation. That, my friends, is what YouTube considers medical misinformation. Again, policy. What did I do? Medical misinformation. Calling for a strategic medical command for the Western world is medical misinformation. Talking about the oxygen pipes in hospitals literally freezing and breaking is medical misinformation. Talking about how, again, supply constraint when it comes to a hospital environment really sucks from a political standpoint, that is medical misinformation. So that's right. That is the kind of stuff YouTube is now going to protect you from. Now, this is my second strike. If you go up here, this was my warning strike. To tell me I was doing something wrong, not to do it again. I did a video talking about how the hollow hoax ban won't work. And that was under hate speech policy. And you'll notice appeals are rejected. Basically, what I talked about was how if you're just simply using keyword filter lists in order to eliminate content, that you're basically going to catch people that are not violating the rules. And the people that are violating the rules, the real trolls out there, are still going to do whatever the hell they're going to do, right? Basically, the real trolls out there go from denying the Holocaust to saying the hollow hoax to saying the banana Can you believe anybody believes in the banana, right? Because again, remember with the trolls out there, they don't care about their accounts. Their accounts are not valuable to them. They understand how they're communicating. They understand how they're talking. They're using social media in an entirely different way than people like me use social media. So they don't care if words get banned. They don't care if their accounts get banned. They will just pop back up again, and next week they'll be talking about the banana denial. Can you believe anybody believes in bananas anymore? It's ridiculous. It's the noses on their face. That's a thing. They can't see past those noses to understand what the reality of bananas are. And I did this video. Talking about how the Hollow Hoax ban won't work, basically, right? I talked about, since my name is Eli, again, the anti-Semitic people out there are so fucking stupid. They don't realize, hey, you can have a name that's Eli without actually being Jewish. I have 0% Jew in me. I have 0% Jewish in me. I wouldn't care if I did. I just don't. My entire family is from the Midwest. I know where my family comes from for a long frickin' way back. I have no Jewish in me. Basically, my father had a very common name during the 1950s. When I was born, he didn't want his son to have a very common name, and so he named me Eli. And now in 2020, Eli is now a pretty common name. I guess everybody had the same idea at some point. But anyways, back then, nobody was named Eli. He decided, and my mom decided to name me Eli because it was an unusual name. And they were around no Jewish people, so they didn't even think about it being a Jewish name. They were around so few Jewish people that when they named me Eli, it did not come. The question did not come up, well, will people think he's Jewish? Because there are no Jewish people, so it didn't even cross their minds, right? Anyways, but I talk about all the anti-Semitic hate and everything that I get on YouTube, where people talk about my nose, where people talk about my ears, where people talk about, well, people like me, right? All of this hate on YouTube that YouTube doesn't really do much about, right? But I talked about it, and getting all that anti-Semitic hate and everything else, basically saying that simply banning these words won't work. Essentially, again, those people, the trolls out there, they'll keep doing what they're doing, and then people like me that then start talking about these real subjects will get punished because we're talking about things that happen to fit the keyword filter and so on and so forth. And so basically that's what I got my first. That's what I got my first strike for hate speech. So basically, in there, and again, what I explained in there is that so much of the problem with modern social media is the amplification systems that they have built. Right? They don't want to amplify. They don't want to amplify the wrong things. I would argue they shouldn't be amplifying anything. Give me control over my feeds. Give me control over who I follow, so on and so forth, and then you don't have to worry about the amplification. They don't believe. They do not believe in allowing people to do what people want to do. They have to control everything. And so that's where you get the problem of the amplification system and how all this stuff works, is because they are controlling so many things. They are causing so many problems. They then try to fix the problems that they created. And then you get a disaster where somebody who is a fake Jew that gets a hell of a lot of hate on YouTube itself gets a hate speech community strike for explaining what the problem is and how to solve it. And that's the world we're now in. Again, you don't have to like me. I get it. A lot of people out there don't like me. The personality that I bring to YouTube, I know, it's acerbic, it's sarcastic, it's mean, everything's dead. I get it. But here's the thing. When you look at my content, am I spreading some far-right ideology? Even when I talk about the issues with the Black Lives Matter protests, one of the things that I try to explain is because I think it's going to be worse for black people at the end of the day. Hey, guess what? When you riot and you burn down cities and you're bringing down statues and the whole 9 yards, a lot of people, I'm not saying who, are probably not going to move into your city. Let's just say I'm 5 miles away from Baltimore City. I'm 5 miles away from Baltimore City and 9 hours away from where I'm moving. Well, Eli, if you just want to move back to an urban environment with cafes and bars, why don't you move to Baltimore City? I live there. There was a lot of crime. And I just, I don't want to have to worry about my car getting broken into like every week. Like once a month, again, or once a year. Like again, I'm moving to a city. It has crime. So if my car gets broken into every year, every couple of years, all right, I mean that's a reasonable cost of doing business in a city. But like when you're in Baltimore and just every it's just so ridiculous, right? So anyways, one of the things I try to explain, even when I talk about BLM and oh my God, I get so horrible on that. Again, one of my big arguments with this is I think it's going to be worse for the African Americans. I genuinely do. When you have people coming out and they argue that the protests and the mostly peaceful protests, that's a-okay, and that everybody supports these folks in the whole 9 yards. I'm just saying, for some of us are like, oh, you want me to buy a few $100,000 house in an area and spin up a business in an area where shit could get burned down like overnight because some dumbass cop does something really freaking stupid. How about no? And again, it's like I leave, and that's tax money. My income tax doesn't go there. My property tax doesn't go there. Any other things that I would provide don't go there. And so even when I talk about the whole BLM thing, I'm actually talking about it from I think it's going to be worse for black people. And I actually do care because black people are people. I know it's true, but they're people. And I would like to see them not getting so screwed in the world anymore. But anyways, we're now in this world, apparently. We're now in this world where people like me, people that are revolutionary moderates. That's what I am. I'm a revolutionary moderate. It's like, yeah, viva la moderation. Well, that sounds like moderation. Anyways, just like I'm just trying to explain these things. I'm trying to explain why we do need to worry about COVID. 100% we do need to worry about COVID. On the same time, we need to worry about the economy. Again, the economy brings us PPE. The economy brings us food. The economy brings us vaccines. The economy brings us gasoline so that we can drive our ambulances to drop people off at the hospital. So yes, do we need to be concerned about COVID? Absolutely. But we also need to be concerned about the economy. Again, talking about COVID, one of the reasons I've been talking about COVID so much is when I moved to Appalachia, one of the projects I want to spin up, this is hopefully going to be my future. Hopefully my future is something called Silicon Dojo. So the idea with Silicon Dojo is basically teach technology in the same methodology as martial arts, right? So I took many years of martial arts. And honestly, as a style of education, I think the way martial arts is taught is just exemplary. It's a great way of teaching information. Basically, it's self-study, right? Whether you get your black belt in 3 years or whether you get your black belt in 10 years, the sensei doesn't really care because you're paying him a monthly fee. Right? It's collaborative education. So not only are you expected to go to the sensei, but if you're a yellow belt and you're having a problem with something, like you're expected to ask the orange belt. I'm a yellow belt. I think it's orange is next. And so you're a yellow belt. You're trying to figure out something. You're like, yeah, I'm trying to smack this guy in the nuts, and I just don't really feel like I'm connecting with his nuts in the proper way. And then the orange belt can say, oh yeah, I was having that problem when I was doing it too. And what you have to understand is instead of smacking him in the nuts this way, see if you twist your arm a little bit and smack him in the. See how you get that little whip in there. Right, but that's the thing. It's a collaborative education. Like everybody is part of the education process. Bullshit. Anyways, talked about this a lot. So when I go to Appalachia, one of the things after I move, once I get there, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 months from now, probably my timeline. I would like to start doing Silicon Dojo, and there commercial real estate is relatively inexpensive. It costs about $1 per square foot per month. So whatever, I can afford almost whatever I want to afford there. But there's a question. There's a question of how much space should I get? So I can afford space, but I don't want to waste money. So like with the whole COVID thing going on, I've taken a look at where I'm going, and they're in what's called phase 2. So phase 2 for the COVID idiocy is basically you can have 10 people in a room. So you can have 10 people in a room. Well, why is this important? Why is this important from a practical standpoint that I can have 10 people in a room? So I am actually looking at renting space. That space is going to cost me $1 per square foot. When I've done the math for social distancing and doing tables and everything else, what I figure is I can put approximately 10 people in a 500 square foot room. So me and actually 9 people, right? You remember it's 10 total. So me and 9 people, I can put people in a 500 square foot room. Pretty reasonably. Everybody should be I'm actually looking at about 500 square foot space here. So everybody should be reasonably well spread out. They have their social distance. I put a fan on, right? And so that'll cost me, let's say, $600 a month. Well, the important thing to understand is to be thinking about, again, if you're going to rent and if you're going to do a lease, one of the questions is, well, what if you can get 20 people? What if you can get 30 people, right? So when you're going to be renting out a space, something you have to think about is growth for the future, right? I may only have 5 people now, but if I can have 20 people in a month or 5 months, maybe I want a bigger space. Well, if we look at how COVID is being dealt with by the politicians and we see all the shutdowns and everything, what I'm looking at is it doesn't matter whether I have a 500 square foot space or a 1,000 square foot space or a 2,000 square foot space. And I can afford a 2,000 square foot space. But it doesn't matter what size, because under phase 2, I can only have 10 people in that room. 10 people are allowed in a room. If the room is 500 square feet, I can have 10 people in it. If it's 1,000 square feet, I can have 10 people in it. If it's 2,000 square fucking feet, I can have 10 people in it. So, as a business person, why am I going to pay for 2,000 square feet of space when by the current regulations I can only have 10 people that will fit into 500 square feet of space? Wouldn't it be better to only rent 500 square feet of space and then, I don't know, buy a couple of more Raspberry Pi things or something like that, right? This is the kind of business thing that you need to be thinking about. And this is what I try to talk about when we talk about COVID, and why this then becomes important when I talk about the National Health Service break-in, when I talk about the more virulent version of COVID that is now spreading in South Africa, when I talk about that new mutation of COVID in South Africa that looks like the vaccine may not actually protect you against. Again, this is all go read The Guardian, go read the LA Times, go read the New York Times. This is all incredibly well documented by the right people. Why that matters is, again, when I am doing my mental math on how to build out a business, everything is a bet. Everything in life is a bet. Whether it's your business, whether it's your career, everything is a bet, right? And so you got to put down money. You got to think how things go. Sometimes it goes for you. Sometimes it goes against you. That's just how it is, right? And so basically what I'm trying to explain with a lot of these COVID things is like, okay, you know that you have these restrictions. Politicians and liars, the politicians and liars out there are basically telling us we'll be able to get back to quote unquote normal by June or July. And so, again, if I'm going to do a Silicon Dojo, so by the time I'll be able to do it is probably about April. And so March, April, May, June, July, right? So if I'm thinking about renting a space. So I'm thinking about renting a space, and then within 3 or 4 months, we're supposed to be back to normal. Well, then there's a thought, maybe I should go for that 1,000 square foot space. Maybe I should go for that 1,500 square foot space. But why I talk about the strain of COVID in South Africa that is well documented, that the vaccine may not be able to do anything against, because then the question that comes up is, well, do you think we'll actually be back to normal in June or July? Again, when you see well documented, just read about this today. Healthcare providers, 45% of healthcare providers now are refusing the vaccine. I'm not saying that they should refuse the vaccine. I'm not getting the whole vaccine argument. But when you see that 45% of healthcare providers are refusing the vaccine, there's literally problems right now in the United States where so many healthcare providers are refusing to take the vaccine that they then have too much vaccine to provide. But with the tier system, like if they give vaccine to anybody outside the tier system, there's major penalties. Right now, New York City, this is absolutely beautiful, New York City. There are literally doses of the vaccine going to waste because so few healthcare professionals want the vaccine, and then when they're trying to give the vaccine, they can't give the vaccine to anybody outside of the tier that they're currently dealing with because they might get $1 million fine and a whole bunch of other stuff. So now vaccine is literally being thrown in the trash because the people that are in the tier don't necessarily want it, and they can't give it to the people that want it that are outside of the tier. Yay, Bill de Blasio. Yay, de Blasio. Keep being you, de Blasio. Oh, I love New York City politics. I love New York politics. It so shows you how absurd all this crap is, right? But anyways, when you start looking at virulent strain that the vaccine might not deal with. When you look at healthcare providers, not necessarily taking the vaccine. When you look at right now, in December of 2020, 20 million doses. Trump said, 20 million doses of vaccine was supposed to be put into people's arms in December, right? And now we are well into January, and like 7 million doses have been put in. right? So even if you got all the doses, again, doesn't matter to you. And so the reason that I talk about this stuff is if you're a business person, like you need to be thinking about what do you honestly believe? Do you honestly believe we'll be back to normal in June or July? Do you want to push that by a couple months? Maybe we'll be back to normal in September. Do you want to push that by another couple months? Do you think we'll be back to normal in December? Or again, one of the things that I explain when I look at all the math, when I look at all the information, I think we're screwed till 2024. All right? I'm just looking at the information, and that's what I try to talk about because again, for the business people and the people in their careers and all that kind of stuff, you have to be looking at the information so that you can make a decision. Some people are going to some people are going to bet that we're going to be back to normal in June or July. Some people are going to bet they're going to be back to normal in August. Some people are going to bet we won't be back to normal till 2024. One of us is going to be right. One of those bets is going to be right, and the other ones are going to be wrong. But I think it's important that we have that information so people can come to their own conclusions and figure out what to do with it. But basically, under YouTube's new ways that they're dealing with content moderation, apparently we can't talk about those kinds of things. We can't talk about the truth and literally just analyze the truth. Again, like I say, with the vaccine, I am not an anti-vaxxer. I will take version number 3. I've had every vaccine that's out there, basically, other than anthrax, and I'll take version number 3. You want to know why I say I'll take version number 3? I'll take version number 3 because of the crap, again, we're seeing in the UK. Have you seen this in the UK? Where the UK government is talking about giving people half doses of the vaccine because that'll extend the amount of vaccine that they have. And do you know what Pfizer and Moderna have said about that? No. Remember, we're told, trust the science, trust the science, trust the science. And then the government gets a hold of this stuff and they're like, well, let's spread this out. What if we just give everybody half a dose? And then the scientists are like, no, fuck no. We did not test for that. We tested for the dose that we gave you. This is what was tested. This is the regime that was tested. This is the science. And the politicians get a hold of the science, and then they start saying, well, what if we just give everybody half the dose? What if, and then they start going, well, the important thing is that the vaccine does give people a certain amount of protection. So what if we just simply give everybody possible the first dose, and then worry about the second dose later? That's a new government policy out of the UK. And then the UK comes back and it says, well, now you can mix and match the different vaccines, right? So if you take a Moderna first, under certain circumstances, you can take a Pfizer second. If you take a Pfizer first, you can take a Moderna second. You know what Moderna and Pfizer have said? What the fuck? What the fuck? You know what the scientists are saying? The scientists are saying, we never said that shit, bitches. We never said that shit. None of that is what the fuck we said. Remember, trust the science? And so when I talk about taking version number 3, I am not an anti-science person. I am not an anti-vaxxer. I just see how logistic systems work, and I just want everything to be worked out. All right. And again, and I think these are reasonable discussion points to be having, but this is the kind of stuff that it appears that YouTube is now going to be cracking down on because they don't want this type of information on YouTube. They don't want rational people, relatively moderate people, having rational, relatively blasé conversations about how they feel about COVID and the vaccines and the government responses and the whole 9 yards, right? So the guy who believes in taking the vaccine after the 3rd version, the guy that believes that we should take, supply constraints in the hospital system, right? Seriously, along with the economy, I'm the one that gets punished under the new community strike system. And this was manually, and the important thing to understand here is that this was manually reviewed. Theoretically, I don't believe it. I think it was a fucking retarded ass monkey that manually reviewed it. But this was manually reviewed. Everything that I'm talking about now, this was manually reviewed to say that it violates their medical misinformation policy. And so this is, for me, where I look at it and I figure, I probably literally just don't have much more time on YouTube. I'm not arguing about it. Look, I'm not arguing. I'm not screaming. It is what it is. I have plans. I have a future. I know where I'm going. But I think it's an interesting thing to be sitting here and realizing Yeah, so 10, so I've been on since September 2009. I've been on since September 2009. Over a million subscribers. And again, right now I make real money. I make real this is a salary, right? I literally make enough money off of YouTube right now that I can pay for Silicon Dojo, and depending on how much I pay my employees, I could pay between 1 to 2 full-time employees and still have cash left over. I make that much money off of YouTube at this point in time. Um, and all of this can disappear in the blink of an eye because YouTube's AI is such a worthless piece of shit. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm just saying it's a worthless piece of. You don't have to be mad to just say it as it is. YouTube's AI is just a worthless piece of shit. And Susan W., the CEO of YouTube, apparently does not care. And so it's an interesting question of how long will I be on YouTube? Literally. And then what's going to happen to other content creators? It's a weird thing. As far as me going into the future, again, I'm going to just keep plugging along as I'm plugging along. My idea right now is, again, to keep doing this, as I can build up Silicon Dojo. Hopefully, essentially, there's only so many hours in a day, so more hours will be spent on Silicon Dojo, and fewer hours will be spent on YouTube. That's the hope going into the future. So that's where I'm going to be focused on. A lot of people say, well, what about Odyssey? What about BitChute? Eli, you need to go. You need to go to one of these distributed platforms. And I think with that, it comes back to my feeling about all of social media is that social media isn't fun. Like, really, not to sound too whiny or anything, but social media isn't that fun anymore. Like, again, I remember Twitter coming out and Facebook coming out and YouTube coming out, and we all thought it was going to be SMTP 3.0 and RSS 3.0 and RTMP 3.0. The idea was, okay, you create an infrastructure that it's easier to scale and manage if it's centralized. And for that, you get to put ads based off of our content. That was the initial idea. And then as things have gone over the past 10 years, social media is just, I don't know. It's not good. It's not good. Again, as I've talked about before, the only social media account I have at this point is YouTube. I don't have LinkedIn. I don't have Twitter. I don't have Facebook. Don't have Instagram, right? I got rid of all those accounts, and there's literally no day I wake up in the morning and go, oh, if only I had a Facebook account. I don't care because they're not good. They're not fun. They're not fun. What these people don't realize, they're not fun. They have gone in, the Silicon Valley, masters of the universe have gone in. And they've been so focused on controlling how people use their platform that a long time ago, the platforms just literally stopped being interesting. Again, for Twitter was really interesting when it was able to be used basically as a communication bus for almost anything that wanted to use it, right? Back in the days when it had very, very, very open APIs, so you could use a hell of a lot of tools on Twitter, that was a great time period. What happened? Twitter got greedy. They closed down their API so that they could own everything. And honestly, Twitter just became a crappy little thing probably back in 2014, 2015. And if you look, they plateaued in 2014, 2015. And now that they kicked Trump off, they're probably going to die. Again, with Facebook was originally pretty good until, again, they keep going in there, they're screwing with their algorithm, and all of a sudden I get more and more content in my feed that basically is designed to piss me off. I don't go into Facebook to piss myself off. I want to go there to see cute corgi pictures. Like, literally, when I first originally had my Facebook account, what got me addicted to Facebook was cute corgi pictures. That was it. Oh my, you don't understand. You don't understand. Like 2009 through 2011, I was a corgi addict. Corgi butts, in the world, there's nothing cuter than a fucking corgi butt. I'm telling you, originally with Facebook, it was all about the corgi butts. All about the corgi butts. Hong Kong corgi butts, Scottish corgi butts, American corgi butts. Give me a corgi butt. I was a happy boy. But Mark Zuckerberg doesn't want you to be happy using the platform. Don't be ridiculous. That doesn't get enough interactions. So then I started getting more and more content talking about Benghazi. Literally, that was one of the reasons I wanted to get off of Facebook is one of my family members is, whatever, that side of the equation. And again, this was back when Obama was in office and the whole 9 yards. And it was just Benghazi. I would just get these things of Benghazi. And again, I don't really care what his politics are. We have Thanksgiving dinner once a year. He's a good guy, cares about his family, does his full time work, the whole 9 yards. You know, you don't have to know about everybody's politics all the time. And then I just got this list of Benghazi and Second Amendment, and I was like, I literally don't want to see this horse crap. But there's no real good way to deal with it. And so what I found with social media is that it's just not, man, it's not fun. Like when I think about YouTube, what finally really got me interested in watching YouTube. So for a long time, I was a content creator without watching YouTube. Until like 2014, I actually did not watch YouTube at all. And what brought me to YouTube? What brought me to YouTube was Zay Frank and the Vlogbrothers. Think about that, you know? Don't forget to be awesome. The Vlogbrothers is what got me to YouTube. The Vlogbrothers, and then all the interesting things that were going on at the time. That was really cool. What's happened to YouTube since then? This has gone to hell. It's a whole bunch of talking heads screaming about something. Anyways, and so one of the things I look at with Odyssey or BitChute or any of these other platforms is once YouTube kills my channel, which it probably will. I put money on it. I don't. I think I'm done. Just like when I killed my Facebook account, I haven't really looked back. I've done a few experimental things, like just to play around, like with creating for when I do in-person groups or whatever. But I've never really wanted the Facebook experience again. Like there was like a couple of tools that I might have needed or tried to use, and then I scrapped it anyway. But I've never looked back on Facebook and wanted to be on Facebook. I never looked back on Twitter, wanted to be on Twitter. I've never looked back on Instagram, I want to be on Instagram. And right now, again, YouTube pays me a chunk of money, so it's worthwhile to be here. But the minute that YouTube kicks me off of YouTube, I think I'm done with all this. Again, social media isn't fun. Social media isn't enjoyable. This isn't something that makes your life better. At least doesn't make my life better at the end of the day. So when this is all done, that's why I will be focusing on Silicon Dojo or something along those lines. I will not be going to Odyssey. I will not be going to BitChute or anything like that. Simply because, yeah, I'm just going to be done with social media. I'm just done. Again, it's not... I think that's like we look at some of these things and it's like, is Jeremy Kauffman better than Mark Zuckerberg? Yes. Hands down, yes. I have never wanted to punch Jeremy Kauffman. I have never wanted to do physical violence to Jeremy Kauffman. Metaphorically speaking, he's a good guy. But at the end of the day, he's still building. What is Odyssey? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you look at that. You look at this after 10 years, and is this what any of us really want? Or are we in inertia? Because we've been doing it, are we continuing to do it? So anyways, those are my thoughts. Got my community strike for, questioning why we don't have a strategic medical command. Oh, the horrors. That's why I was off for 7 days. The next time I get a community strike, I will be off for 2 weeks. So stay tuned. Probably not going to be that long. And then after that, my channel will be dead. And don't worry, I will go off and I will do other things. I can do other things, I don't know. Maybe this will force me. To go off and do other things. I don't know. So what do you think about all this? What do you think about the idiocy of YouTube's current moderation policies? What do you think about, again, that YouTube content creators are now literally getting banned essentially based off of what appears to be keyword lists. Keyword lists in the titles, and if it's the wrong keywords, you get punished. What do you think this is going to do for social media in general? Are you any more excited or less excited about social media at the end of the day? These masters of the universe and all that. How do you think this is all working out? I don't know. Put your thoughts down in the comment section down below. I'll be doing more videos. A whole bunch of videos today. Computing Forever, he got his channel terminated. Trump has been taken off of all social media at this point. Parler has been freaking destroyed by Silicon Valley at this point. So I'll be doing more videos. If you're like, Eli, why are you doing this series of videos? It's just because it's in the news and it's important. Like Parler's interesting. When you see Apple, Google, and then AWS go after Parler at the exact same time, Yeah, there's no conspiracy there. There's no collaboration. It's inconceivable that you would think that these three major technology companies would all take the exact same action at the exact same time, and you would call that a conspiracy. Like, wow. Well, you know what a theory is, right? It's always funny with the science people. The science people are always like conspiracy theory. Oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. Well, conspiracy theories are kind of like the theory of gravity, right? It's still called the theory of gravity. You realize it is still called the theory of gravity. We don't have the law of gravity. We have this theory of gravity, right? A theory is when you take a look at the information being presented to you and then you come up with a hypothesis about why these events are happening, and then you study to see if that hypothesis is true. So I'm just saying, when you talk about conspiracy theories, you are right. You are right. It is absolutely 100% a conspiracy theory that Silicon Valley is trying to take down Parler. That is a theory. And I'm basing that theory off of Apple and Google and AWS and all of these other tech companies at the exact same time, taking down Parler. I think that's a rather decent hypothesis. However you feel about Parler, you can hate Parler, but so, anyways, put your thoughts down in the doobles. As always, if you like my content, you want it in audio only fashion, you can get it on iTunes, Podbean, and Spotify. Not everything that I do is clickbaity enough to make it to YouTube in a timely manner, so do make sure to go to those podcasting services. And again, just so you realize, if I do get kicked off of YouTube, the podcast will go away too. Because I don't know. It's just, I really wish COVID wasn't around. Honestly, right now, I really wish COVID wasn't around. At the beginning of the year, I was looking at my next thing to do, my next big projects, and I had all these ideas. I had money on the table. I had plans. All of it was on the table. And then COVID happened. So to be clear, if YouTube kills this thing, I'm done. You can go find me on a mountaintop in Appalachia. I'll be on a mountaintop in Appalachia making an LED light, turn on and turn off. People like, are you Eli the computer guy? And I'll be like, go away, go away, go away before I use my LED on you. There is no Eli the computer guy here. Eli the computer guy died years ago. Go away. Anywho, see y'all later.